What is going on, everybody? You are listening to Crossover Comics Podcast. My name is Jeremy. I am here with my co-host Michael, as always, and we've got a special guest today. Why don't you introduce yourself, my friend?
What's up, guys? My name is Bumpkins. I've been reading comics for a little over 30 years now, and love talking to you guys. I love interacting with you guys on TikTok. That's where we've all kind of met each other, met in air quotes. But
Right.
it's been super fun, like meeting people and just interacting, because that's all I want is just interaction and to talk to people who like stuff that the same kind of stuff that I like. And so, you guys are a couple of those guys, and it's really fun. It's fun chatting with you guys.
Well, I appreciate that, man, because you're actually one of the
I appreciate
first few TikTokers I actually followed. So,
Wow. Okay.
yeah, so it kind of, it's cool how stuff comes full circle like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't see my videos and like, nope, I'm out. This isn't for me. I want no part of this.
Right. Nah, if your content is nerdy, I'm all for it. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
facts.
definitely.
Same. I mean, I remember when I first came across your videos, I was like, "Oh, he has omnis. I have
Yep.
omnis. Lit."
I know that's what I like too. I love seeing like, oh wait, they have a big shelf full of omnis too. I love seeing that. Not
Right.
saying that
Yeah.
everybody has to, but it's cool when you do see that.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, we figured the topic today we could go over a very confusing subject for some people, the different ages of comic books. So we're talking golden, silver, bronze, modern age. Where do you guys want to start on that? Because there is a plethora of things.
Well,
I mean,
first of all,
You could always start at the beginning with the golden age. You've got your
yeah.
your 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 comics, your serials from the 30s, and
Mhm.
your Action Comics #1 and all that stuff. I mean, not saying that that was the start, but I mean back in that in those days, that's your golden age. Your
True.
the
Right,
heyday of
right.
comics.
The
And,
true
and
beginning.
one thing I noticed while I was doing a bunch of research, I was scrolling through like character lists and stuff like that, is the amount of like jungle related comic books that were out
Hmm.
back then, like Conan and Sheena. Like it was a
Mhm.
lot.
Yeah, yeah. There was a lot of pulp heroes. You had
The
the
shadow.
Phantom.
Uh,
Uh, you know,
You had the Shadow,
yeah. Yep. That's what I was trying to think
Green
of.
Hornet.
and there. I mean, like I
Hmm.
got this list pulled up here. You've got Aquaman that actually came out in the Golden Age, but then you go down and you've got people like Black Condor and Mighty Man and the Fox, Catman. I mean, all kind. And like, if you guys ever seen Catman, he is like a carbon copy of Batman, just with different
Oh
colors.
yeah.
True that. Yep. Yep.
I'm familiar with the Catman from like the Secret Six series from DC, like in the mid 2000s, and I don't have a
Oh,
rich knowledge of that character, but I'm familiar with that era, and he does have the sort of the he does kind of look Batman-esque with the small ears, but he's all brown instead of gray and black. He's like
mhm.
brown and darker brown, and with like cat claws on his chest instead of a bat. But there's some similarities there.
I actually love that run.
Yeah.
Written by Gail Simone.
Hmm. Yeah, that
That
was pretty
was that
fun.
was that was amazing. Yeah. Golden Age, man. So for me, this is what I wanted to know from you guys because I noticed through my research, even the internet doesn't have a clear start to finish
Right.
with some of these ages. And I like to think that most people we have our own like idea of where these certain ages start and end. So in terms of the golden age, I was wondering where do y'all think the start of the golden age is?
Oh man, I don't know that I know an exact start. It's not it's before Action Comics. It's before Superman because there was plenty of heroes before that. But it's in the 30s. I always just tried to narrow it down to a decade or maybe a half a decade. Like a 5 year time span. So it's definitely in the early to mid 30s. But I'm not sure that I could put like a definitive stamp because I don't know if it would be whatever the first one is, right? Like I don't know what would be before the golden age, so I'm not really sure
Right.
what the
And
very
like it,
first comic from that era was,
Right.
but
the earliest one that I know of was for the Shadow back in 1931.
okay.
Because before
1931.
that, he was actually a narrator for a radio show it was like a detective radio
Right.
show, and they just used this
Yeah.
guy called the Shadow as like the voice of the show, and then he got like a bunch of Pulp Fiction novels, and then he ended up getting a comic book. And DC still uses
Nice.
him a lot, don't they?
I don't think DC has the license to the
No, it's
I
Shadow.
Dynamite
think
right
it's
now, I think.
Yeah,
Dynamite. Dynamite.
yeah.
Yeah.
Although I think there's some crossovers with him and Batman from recent years, or maybe even a brand new one. I'm not sure, but
They did a crossover with Batman. I want to say like maybe like 2 to 3 years ago,
yeah, that sounds about right.
because I remember Alex Ross did the covers
Right.
for it. But yeah, me actually, my this is just my personal answer and what I think the start of the golden age. I actually do like to say Action Comics #1,
Okay.
just because I like to think of. So let's use like the MCU for example. I like to think that the MCU kicked off the golden age of comic book movies, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Where things were getting very, they were getting very popular. They were more mainstream. So with Action Comics #1, the fact that really kicked off like the superhero genre,
Mm.
because like before Superman, you had like your heroes, you had like Zorro and like the Shadow and the Green Hornet, but they were all kind of similar. They
Yeah.
were vigilantes that didn't have
They all kind of had the
powers.
trench coat, the fedora
They
hats.
Right.
right.
Or
So
they're
I
hanging out in
think
the jungle, like you said, Conan and Tarzan
Right.
and Sheena and all that.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, that's my start
Yeah.
is Action Comics.
Yeah, I can see
Yeah.
that. I hadn't really thought about that, because like you said, I mean that sort of changed the game a little bit, and
Mm-hmm.
everything. There was comics before that, obviously, but that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because then even if you get into like what's I guess what would be considered like the middle of the golden age, there was it like kind of shifted away from superheroes for a little while, and it was a lot of like romance and mystery books.
Yeah, westerns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which apparently didn't last very long.
Well, there was a lot of horror comics too. Once you get up into the 50s, and parents were getting outraged, thinking that their kids were being they were reading all these like books that are talking about Satan worshiping and all this stuff, and then
Right.
you get that's where you get the comics code and all that stuff. So
Yeah,
So
Seduction of
um,
let's
the
talk about the
Innocent.
Comics Code
yeah,
then, because I've seen a few people say that right when the Comics Code Authority came in was pretty much where they feel like the Silver Age started.
Hmm. I can, you know, I can get that. I can get that.
I think
Because
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
it's kind of like the Comics Code was like their answer to the book Seduction of the Innocent.
Right.
So, and you obviously saw a shift in tone when it came to the Silver Age. Things got a lot more lighthearted, even though some Golden Age stories are very goofy as is, but you really they started to play up on the like the sci-fi element of certain things.
Right.
But yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
That's
I
one
was
of the
thinking,
first ones.
for me that because I can't really put a time on the beginning or end of any age except for the Silver Age, and I've always thought of, and I think a lot of people do too, consider Showcase Comics #4 from 1956, which is the first appearance of Barry Allen, the Flash.
Mhm.
Um, that's always kind of what I've considered the beginning of the Silver Age. But that's right in line with the Comics Code. The Comics Code started in 1954, I believe. So that's right in that time period, that
Right.
mid 50s
I
era
I
there.
agree. That's where I like to start my Silver Age, is with the first appearance of Barry Allen.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Because that was right around the same time Justice League was a thing, and they were kind of phasing out the JSA.
true.
Right.
Because you get a big change.
Excuse me.
But yeah,
Yeah,
it was
because then
like
you had Barry Allen becoming the Flash, even though there had been a Flash before that. And then 3 years later, in 1959, you get Hal Jordan Green Lantern, where there had been Alan Scott Green Lantern before that. So yeah, that's they're trying to DC was trying to utilize those characters to start new books or utilize pre-existing characters, but pre-existing mantles, I guess, but new characters to jumpstart a bunch of
and
new
and
comics.
that's where we kind of get into like the legacy characters like the Flash and the Green Lantern because
Yeah,
it's more of a title rather than the actual person's name. Because
right.
Superman is Superman. You're not, I mean, that's not really a mantle that a lot of people pick up until you get into like recent comics with
Hmm.
Cal
John Kent.
with Jonathan Kent taking up
Yeah,
the mantle and stuff like that. But also something I noticed between the Gold and Silver Age is the costumes for superheroes got a lot slimmed down.
right.
In the Golden Age, all their stuff had big, huge collars and like huge flowing capes and like just these elaborate boots and gloves. And then you get to the Silver Age and everything's kind of spandex.
Right.
True, true. Yeah, I mean, you can even see that in like Batman. Golden Age Batman had the big old ears and
And the bright purple gloves
the bright
and
purple gloves. Yes, and that cape. That cape was like huge. And then once you get towards the Silver Age, we get more of the kind of like Adam West looking Batman. You know,
Yeah.
but
so what are your guys' like some of your favorite characters from that Silver Age? Because I know both of you are big fans of that Silver Age era of comics. So like what are some of your favorite ones to read from that age?
I don't necessarily love a lot of the Silver Age books. I've
Oh, okay.
read quite a few of Silver Age books from Marvel. I spent the last couple of years, trying to go through and reading as many of those as I could. And I've read several hundred issues, over 100 issues of Spider-Man, Daredevil, Avengers, Fantastic Four, and I don't necessarily love a lot of that stuff. I think Spider-Man, at least from Marvel, Spider-Man is consistently the best. But and I like most of the Fantastic Four from that era. But I don't really love most of the Avengers comics up through the first 100 issues. I just think they're kind of silly. They spend half the time fighting with each other instead of fighting the villain, and
I
I
agree.
don't like Daredevil from that era at all. So
Okay,
it's
well
just
then
a
I
preference
stand
though.
corrected.
Yeah,
I
it's just a preference though. I just think it's a lot of it's silly. My where it turns around for me is the Bronze Age. That's my favorite. But from that era, I love the Spider-Man from that era. I think Spider-Man's consistently good.
hmm
Um, especially for Marvel.
I definitely agree with you because it's like I I read like Silver Age stories like through the omnibuses,
Yeah,
right? And I definitely agree with you with the Avengers. I do not like those Silver Age stories at all.
right.
They're just not that good. I don't think Avengers get good until like the Kree Scroll War.
Yep.
That's like
I
one
agree.
of the
That's kind of
darker.
where it starts to turn around, and I don't even think the Kree Scroll War is all that is all that great. I think it's a little bit overrated as far as an event
Mm-hmm.
goes, and it wasn't even really an event or anything. But after that, it starts to get pretty interesting.
Right, right, right. And I think I definitely agree. Like Spider Man, you get a lot of classic stories in the
Yeah.
Silver Age Spider Man. Um, you get If This Be My Destiny. That whole 3 issue storyline where he picks up the machinery
Oh
off his
yeah.
back.
Yeah, that's that classic scene
Classic
that we've
stuff.
all seen 100 times on TikTok
Hmm.
now.
Yeah.
Classic stuff. I will say I think Marvel did a better job at Silver Age than DC. Because some of the Silver Age DC stuff is just very silly. Just it's a little too silly,
Yeah.
and it just
Let's
can't
see,
be.
now that
It's
I'm
just
thinking
not
back on it
good.
too, I remember quite a few Batman stories that were just ridiculous from back then. Like,
Mhm.
isn't that the era where the giant coin came in too?
Yes, yes,
Okay, yeah.
yes.
Yeah, that era is where you get, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen and Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane, and there was a lot of silliness coming from DC at the time. But
Jimmy
but
Olsen's still
Marvel,
hanging in there too. That's amazing. Like that they're still
yeah,
putting out Jimmy Olsen books.
yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, Marvel was much more grounded, real world issues. Peter Parker's just a kid down on his luck and um, all that kind of stuff. Whereas DC was just like, doing whatever they wanted to do, just to sell comics to kids. So there is
Right.
definitely a big difference between DC and Marvel in the Silver Age. So yeah, I agree that I think the DC Silver Age are super fun, but yeah, Marvel probably did do a bit better job, giving the reader something new. Because before Fantastic Four #1 in 1961, pretty much, your biggest thing was, those silly 50s Superman and Batman books. And then when Fantastic Four #1 hits in 1961, I can only imagine what the readers were like. Whoa, this is way different. This giant orange rock guy. He's not like this strapping, good-looking superhero. He's like this monster, right? And
Right.
you've got this guy called the Hulk, and he's a monster too. But he's kind of a good guy, but he's kind of not, and he's got problems, and the military's after him. And I mean, yeah. So they did a great job introducing all kinds of different types of stories.
Like they
Well, and
both
then you
seem.
said you do actually like the Bronze Age, since apparently I had my information wrong. I need to do my
Yeah,
research better.
that's all right.
So, but with the Bronze Age, that's where I feel like it got like a little bit looser with the Comic Code Authority.
Yeah,
They started allowing a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. That's where you get a lot of the anti-heroes that, well, at least anti-hero type characters start coming out.
I want to
yeah.
say
Well,
Punisher was Bronze Age, right?
yeah. So he was 1973, I believe. Amazing Spider-Man 129. But a lot of that started with Amazing Spider-Man 96, 97, 98, which is the famous three-part story where Harry Osborn was addicted to drugs. And they actually
Oh, that's
showed that, and
right.
they showed the negative effects of that. Harry was just addicted, and Peter was trying to get him help, and the Comics Code didn't sign off on that, but the government had asked Stan Lee to do like an anti-drug story. So even though the Comics Code Authority said we're not going to approve this drug story, Stan said, "Well, the government asked me to do it, so we're going to do it anyway." And then
Right.
that led to some changes. It didn't get rid of the Comics Code Authority, obviously, but it led to some changes where um, they they changed their stance to allow the depiction of drug use as long as it was depicted in a negative manner, to showing the
Hmm.
negative effects of drugs instead of being like, oh, these things are great.
Right.
So that's where they started to sort of change their ways a little bit and loosen up a little bit.
Okay, that makes sense because I want to say that the the Green Lantern, Green Arrow
Yeah,
series, the issue with Speedy
right.
when he was
Mm.
hooked on drugs and whatnot, that actually still had the Comics Code stamp
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, that's interesting that they approved that one, but they didn't approve the Spider-Man one.
It came
Well, it's
after it.
because of it came after the Spider-Man, so because of the
Ah,
Spider-Man story, they sort of changed their guidelines a little bit.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Because to I think that you know with the Bronze Age, I think the defining trait of the Bronze Age, comics start to dive more into like serious like social and political issues a little bit more,
Seriously, absolutely, yeah.
and that's like the main thing that I look for that like defines Bronze Age. Um, like for me, Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams on Batman. I feel like that was the start of like the Bronze Age for like that character especially.
Yeah.
Uh, making him
Yeah, and
darker.
it's thinking about the Bronze Age is the real tough one to put sort of a start date on because there's a lot of different opinions. A lot of people just think 1970, boom, Bronze Age. A lot of people think it's more centered around those Amazing Spider-Man issues. Or some people say that it starts with the death of Gwen Stacy in Amazing Spider-Man 121. That was in
I've heard that.
72, I think. And then some people think it's mid 70s.
Yeah, I hear
So it's
75. I even hear 78 sometimes. So, yeah.
yeah. And so is it just a specific date that it starts, or is it a story that kicks it off that changes comics? A lot of people attribute it to the price change in the 70s. I don't really know where I stand on that, other than I just view the 70s in general as
Right.
the
And I
Bronze
feel
Age
like
because
that's a
I
pretty
think the
safe bet.
yeah, I think the
Right.
vast majority of it is probably. I'd say probably if I had to put a date on it, I'd probably go the death of Gwen Stacy in 1972, or was it 73? I can't quite remember which
Right.
one, but I'd say with that story is probably a good starting line for the Bronze Age, and then into the mid '80s.
So I always said either I have two. I have two choices. I always said either the death of Gwen Stacy or it was Batman 217. That's when Dick Grayson goes off to college.
Yes, and that was 1970. Yeah, so yeah, right in
Yes.
that same era.
And then right after that, that's when Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams got on the book.
Yeah.
So that's what I also like to see. Um, I think the Bronze Age starts at different times for different characters. I feel like each like different characters have their own like Bronze Age.
I could see that because so like you said, those '70s era Batman books with Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil, that definitely changed the character, made him a little bit darker. Is started the trend of Batman as we know him today. But the Superman books from the '70s, those are still pretty silly. All the way through. I kind of feel like the Superman books all the way through like maybe 1980, or maybe even leading all the way up to Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1985. Like the Superman books stayed kind of silly, but the Batman
Right,
books got darker in the '70s. So yeah, I could see that. That it starts at
right.
different times for different characters.
Why do you think that is that Superman stayed so goofy for so long?
I'm not sure.
I
I don't,
feel
I don't
like
really know.
Because with a character that has the potential to be that overpowered, like you'd figure they'd serious him up a little sooner.
Maybe they just didn't know what to do with him. They're like, oh, he's the big blue Boy Scout, so we have to keep him
right,
uh, super good, super, cut above. Whereas Batman, he's a little bit more works in areas of gray, so we can make him a little
Right.
bit darker.
right, right. In my opinion, I don't really count Superman as going through a Bronze Age
I kind of agree. Yeah,
in terms of his like stories, um, unless you count that one annual, the for the man who has everything, the
yeah.
Mongol
Mm.
story. That feels Bronze Agey, but besides that, I don't, I can't recall one off the
Yeah,
top of
because
my
I
head.
get his artwork stayed pretty exaggerated for a long time.
Yeah. You had Neil Adams do some things and some great covers and stuff. But yeah, Superman just kind of stayed in that. I mean, it sort of quote unquote matured a little bit, but he sort of stayed with that '50s, '60s mentality all the way through the '70s. My favorite era of Superman is right after Crisis when John Byrne took him over, and just that 1986 and later. That's my favorite era of Superman because everything before that I felt was kind of goofy, and I don't
Right.
really want a super
Right.
goofy Superman unless I just want to read something for kicks, but like I don't want to consistently read a bunch of real goofy Superman stories. So
Right, like you can have a couple little offshoots that are goofy and fun here and there, but don't make the entire run just a joke.
right,
Right. Mhm. That's
So
why
okay,
I
you guys
always
got it
feel
like
like.
oh sorry.
Oh, sorry. I just feel like when it comes to like Silver Age Superman, uh, I feel like that kind of sums up the Christopher Reeve movie in a way. Like, even though it took the material seriously, there still was some campy, goofy moments in it.
right.
So
Yeah, I could see that like that. And of course that what was that the '78? So yeah,
mhm.
it's kind of the maybe that's the end of the Silver Age for Superman, and after that movie that that's where we get because it's I don't think it goes all the way up to I don't think he was super goofy all the way up to Crisis. Like when you get into like 1980 territory, like it starts to get a little bit better, a little bit more serious. But his of course his powers were off the charts, and they had to scale him back after Crisis. But yeah, I could see Christopher Reeve being a good ending point for Superman's extra lightheartedness.
Yeah, because right
Right,
before that, wasn't he like, sneezing and making the Earth spin faster or something like that?
Oh
Like he had
man,
gotten so overpowered, it was
yeah.
right,
ridiculous.
exactly,
And
exactly.
plus, he had some crazy powers too throughout the '50s and '60s, and even in the '70s. I can't even think of some of the weird ones, but he had of course, there's the power to. Oh, there was one where he could like his super hearing was so super that he could hear your thoughts, which makes no sense. And
Right, because you don't,
there was,
even if you're thinking, you don't think out loud, so how are you going to hear
yeah,
that? Like,
yeah.
Right.
There was an issue he could shoot little Superman out of his fingers, and just all kinds of weird stuff. There, I
what?
think there's a lot of there was a
Wait a
lot
minute,
of
back up.
yeah. I don't know if that was a. I don't think that was like a power. I think that's something that happened to him in the comic. But I think there was a lot of drug use back then.
Oh, I mean, we are talking what, 60s and 70s,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
70s, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of the times, I guess.
yeah.
True that. True that. True that. Honestly, you know what? I'm just noticing, like through our conversation that we're having, it seems like DC has been a clear example of when these ages, like quote unquote, start and end.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we can pinpoint it, but with Marvel, it's kind of hard to pinpoint where their ages start and end.
Yeah, because they
Yeah,
don't
there
have
it
as
is a
many
lot more
like
blurry
reboot
with Marvel.
events.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it is a lot blurry with Marvel, and that's why I like Crisis on Infinite Earths so well, because
mhm,
I still think that's the greatest comic event that there's ever been, because nowadays you hear, oh, such and such event's going to change the whatever universe for, you've never seen anything like this, but Crisis actually did that. It actually
Right.
changed the universe. It did what it said it was going to do, and it stayed like that for several years until Zero Hour, at least, undid some of it. But Crisis really did change the universe, and it really did reboot. It successfully rebooted, I think, a lot of characters, Superman included, and Marvel didn't really have anything like that until Secret Wars, but that was more just to sell toys than it was to
Right.
yeah,
But
clean
I
up their
feel like
universe.
DC really capitalized on that in a way that Marvel has been trying to replicate. And DC's even been trying to re-replicate since Infinite Earths.
Yeah,
true,
Because what is it now? Every year we've got like a 20 book event and it's supposed to
oh yeah,
change the landscape of the industry and it just doesn't
true.
really affect anything long term.
right. It just adds more confusion nowadays.
Right.
With every new crisis, it's like, oh gosh, now I got to figure out how the universe is going to look after this. I don't know.
Right. And is it going to stay like this? Because
Right,
like with the Dark Crisis event right now, okay, the Justice League is gone, but they're not gone. They're in these weird little shadow dimensions.
right.
True.
So it's like, what is this really going to change by the end of the event?
And you know
Well, and
what?
not on. Well, see, that's the thing is like, and not only that is I wasn't gonna do Dark Crisis because it was so disjointed from everything else. Because not only is the Justice League dead, but not really dead because they're actually just in these little pocket universes. But it's not even that because Superman is on War World right now, and Batman is having himself, a time with this new family that's coming into Gotham over in Detective Comics, and then whatever the story is in Batman. Like they're not even. This event doesn't even agree or tie in with all the other books that DC's putting out right now. So it's just
And
kind of
not at
weird.
all because Chip Zdarsky just started writing Batman again, and
Yeah.
there's nothing about Dark Crisis in that book so far
Yeah,
at all.
Nope.
It's like
No.
it's
So
almost
it's
like Dark Crisis is an Elseworld story that they
it
haven't
is.
said
Yeah.
is an Elseworld story.
And so I don't know what so I wasn't going to get it because it was just so disjointed, and I was just trying to think, what's the point? Like, what's the end game here with this event? What are you trying to do? Especially when you've got your supposedly dead heroes running around in their own books doing their own thing. But then, I started reading it, and it's actually pretty interesting. So, I'm all on board on it, but
Right.
I
I mean,
don't know what they're trying to
it's
do with
really
it.
interestingly
it is
written,
good.
so
It is
it's
good.
keeps your attention, but it's like, is this going to matter in a couple months?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what are you doing? Yeah.
But you know what? Like JJ, like what you said, the fact that it feels like a Elseworlds. You know, I think you're onto something. Like the fact that they retitled the name of the event. They
And they
added
waited
the
3 issues to do that.
right. They added the Infinite Earths, subtext to it. So I'm like,
Yeah.
this could
And I'm not
be
sure if that was planned from the beginning or not. I don't know if maybe they got a couple issues in and then thought, we should maybe. I kind of feel like it was the plan all along was to eventually call it Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, but
Mhm.
I
That's
still
what
don't
I
really know what the goal is with it. What's the plan?
that's what
What
I
what do
think.
they what do they want the universe to look like when it's done? I'm not sure.
especially the fact that they have Pariah in it, and
Yeah,
Pariah is famous for being in Crisis on Infinite Earths. So
sure. Yeah, they were saying that this is a true sequel to Crisis on Infinite Earth. So really, I thought Infinite Crisis was, and I thought all the
I
right,
other
was gonna say,
crises were
haven't you
too. I
done
don't
like
know.
four other
Yeah,
sequels to?
right.
I mean,
I don't
come
know.
on, guys. Like,
I think
we'll
Infinite
buy it,
Crisis was
but
the
don't treat
best
us like we're
sequel.
dumb. Like,
Right, right.
Exactly. Oh, and speaking of, I think we can all agree because our next age is the modern age,
Hmm.
and I like to think that the start of the modern age is with Crisis on Infinite Earths.
I agree. Yep.
That is, yeah, that's where I like to put it.
so would that be
Well,
like
so
Secret Wars with Marvel would be their modern age starting point?
well, actually, I'd go back on that. So I would say the start of the modern age is probably around like 89, 90. With the rise of the creator. They're focused on creators and artists, and then your Image Comics guys and your Spider-Man number ones and your X-Men number ones, your McFarlanes and your Jim Lees and stuff. Because there is a Copper Age as well, and that's
Hmm.
supposed the Copper Age is supposedly mid '80s to like '90s. So Copper Age is like a real short little time span, and then supposedly the modern age starts with like right around 89, 90. Maybe with like 80, was it 89 with Legends of the Dark Knight? Because that was like some of the first variant covers that there ever were with the different
Right,
colored
with the different colored
sheets and
ones.
stuff. Yeah, and then from there, once DC was like, hey, we've got four different covers, everybody else is like, oh, we can do that too, and then it all ballooned out into all the '90s stuff. So I feel like probably that is
Probably
modern
that.
is our
Okay.
modern age
I didn't
start point.
even I didn't even think about like the Copper Age because I know
Yeah.
now we've had like little sub ages
Hmm.
like in between
Yeah,
stuff.
because I saw something about a platinum age
Yes, I saw something
before the
about that
golden
too.
age, and so I'm like thinking
Ooh,
that's mostly comic strips. It had to have been, right? I mean,
I
Have to
guess.
be, have to be. I read something about Atomic Age
Never
where
heard of that.
yeah, that's a new one.
supposedly it's in between the Silver and Golden Age, and it's like when like sci-fi stories started to be like big. So yeah, it's a whole bunch of
I could see that, I guess. But there's no, I guess the important thing to remember is there's no like hard and fast rule. Like there's no one
exactly.
consensus really at all. So it's just whatever you
Unless
feel
you
like.
ask CGC because CGC knows all
But
apparently.
I don't.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, I
But
don't. I don't mess. I don't do any of that stuff. Not for me is all I'll say. Not for
right,
me.
right, right. Okay, so
Yeah,
like if modern age starts right there with like Crisis of Infinite Earths, then where like my biggest confusion with the modern age, which kind of probably sounds weird, but where would it end?
Well, we're still in it.
That's what I'm saying, but we've been in it for
right.
30 years.
Yeah.
Most of the other ages had a cutoff point, you know what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Yeah.
So are we just now forever the modern age?
I don't know. I mean, I don't. I've never heard anything else other than modern age. I think if there is something else, maybe the modern age ends right around 2000, maybe when
When
Marvel
like do
starts to dig themselves out of bankruptcy and that kind of thing. And um, but again, that's just kind of arbitrary. It's just sort of whatever you feel like, and I don't know what it's called though.
I read
Current age,
somewhere
maybe.
about
I don't know.
a dark age, which was like the late '90s, supposedly, with like Marvel going bankrupt and like all of that stuff.
Well, and
So
not only that, there was a very short amount of time where Image almost overtook DC and Marvel.
true, true, true.
Yeah, there was a few months here and there sprinkled throughout the '90s where Image was number one or number two above Marvel or DC, but it didn't last long. but
No,
yeah, I
and they
mean
were
it's
primarily running off of the success of Spawn because
True,
any of their other characters, you ask them average person, they have never probably heard of most of them.
true.
yeah, I mean Liefeld was cranking out just an ungodly amount of books. Probably more. I think he had more books under his own imprint than any of the other creators did, and to listen to him on his podcast, he was paying in more to Image, to keep the lights on and everything from all of his books. than the other guys were, just because he had more, that kind of thing. But
Hmm.
yeah,
That's
I
surprising.
don't know.
Even
I don't. Yeah, he had so many that and the deal was that they would all pay a percentage of sales of their own books to keep the image, umbrella going.
Right.
And he had so many more books, and I mean, he had so many more sales just because of the fact that he had so many more books that he was giving in more. And it's funny to listen to him talk to it because he likes to talk about how Todd McFarlane would pull all the founders together and tell them, you're not pulling your weight, your books are late, you've got to get your books out on time. And but at the same time, Todd only had the one book. He just had Spawn, whereas Rob Liefeld had about 2 dozen books, and Jim Lee had a few under Homage Studios, and Silvestri had a couple, and
Right,
it
because I
was
think McFarlane looked at his individual sales for Spawn
mhm.
and just figured, okay, well, my one book is selling the best on the company, so I must be putting
Yeah,
in the most money. When it's like, well, not if one of your other creators is putting out 15 titles a month, dude. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
true that.
yeah. So yeah, Liefeld likes to talk about how he, McFarlane was getting onto all of them, even though he just had the one book, and he wasn't
Mhm.
putting in as much just because he just had the one book. I don't know. But it's that's his side. I'd be curious to hear, other people's side of the story too. But it's all fascinating to listen to. If you've ever listened to his podcast, I like it quite a bit.
Okay.
yeah, because like if you hear a lot of the interviews from a lot of different creators from Image back in those days, they've all got slightly different stories on how everything went
Yeah,
down. So I would be really interested to hear from like maybe McFarlane on what his
yeah.
side of that story is, because I don't think he's ever talked about it really, or at least not addressed those claims.
True.
Yeah, he hasn't talked about it as much as Rob Liefeld does, and I don't have any reason to not believe Liefeld about a lot of the events that transpired, but I do think he is telling his version of it, and what he tells is through his own lenses, and
And
I'd
it's
be
also
interested to
30-year
hear.
old, 40-year old information almost.
Sure,
So
yeah,
True.
yeah,
anybody's memory is going to be a little off after that long for anything.
right,
Lost in
I mean,
time. Yeah.
yeah,
Indeed. Indeed. So actually, back on the, I wanted to backtrack because I know you mentioned the Copper Age.
mm.
Uh, could you also place Watchmen in the Dark Knight Returns in the Copper Age, or like where would you place that?
So Watchmen and especially Dark Knight Returns are often looked at as the end of the Bronze Age
Okay.
because those comics were just unlike anything else that had come before it, especially Dark Knight Returns. A lot of people credit that story and Frank Miller for the Batman that we know today. That's why we have the Batman that we know today. I think I agree with that to a point, but going back to what you said before about Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, I think that's the start of getting the Batman that we know today. But then it was really solidified, final nail in this dark Batman coffin with the Dark Knight Returns, and I feel like that probably is the end of the Bronze Age right there because after that everything was different,
Right.
so. We had never really had a Batman story like that before, and then we had never seen anything like Watchmen either. So I feel like those books are when things change, and okay, we're gonna put a bow on this Bronze Age, and now things are different, and
because
go
that was
from
when the
there.
Comic Code Authority finally started completely just going away.
Yeah, they were around. I was trying to look. They were around through the '90s. I remember early 2000s. Publishers bypassed the CCA, and Marvel Comics abandoned it in 2001.
Okay, so it was like
Um,
right around the time Ultimate Spider-Man was coming out that they just stopped worrying about that.
Yeah, I don't know how closely they paid attention to it. I don't really know. I think even in the '90s, like a lot of creators were like, I don't really know what the comics code says, like what it says we can and can't do. Obviously, like no nudity and whatever, but I don't I
And
don't
they even
I don't
played fast
remember
and
a
loose
lot of.
with that too. So I mean,
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
true
for
that,
sure.
true that, true that.
because
Yeah,
that's when you
especially in the
started
'90s.
getting
Yeah.
like the Barbarellas and the
Yeah.
Vampirellas and all those characters.
Vampirellas. Yeah.
And it's like those are the books you feel weird grabbing in the store, you know?
Yeah. John Byrne was looking for every opportunity he could to get She-Hulk in just like a torn little tank top and like little shorts and stuff. So
Right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah, everything
and all
feels
the
like
image
you need to
stuff.
hide your book when you're reading it from that time. It feels
Right,
like.
right.
True, true. I think that's where, especially when you look at like the '90s and like the 2000s, I think that's when the unrealistic like bodies started really being a thing in
Yeah.
comics. Like the men had muscles on top of muscles, and you
Oh, just
know,
look at some of the physiques in the '90s X-Men runs.
Oh
Like
yeah.
Cyclops looks like he's chiseled out
Mhm.
of marble. Like it's
Yeah.
Exactly,
ridiculous.
exactly. And then the
I like that kind
women
of
with the
stuff though, because
tiniest of waists, like
It made
yeah,
sense
I
for mutants because you would expect like these are super powered people, so yeah, of course it's going to be all like, extra jacked looking, but like even the scrawny characters looked jacked out of their minds.
yeah.
right,
I always do. Like I like seeing Batman, big and beefy and muscular, but then I think about how do people not see Bruce Wayne just being completely jacked out of his mind? What do they
Right.
think about that?
right.
So, but
Like the
I like,
fact that he's
it's
like
all
18 inches thick isn't suspicious at
yeah,
all.
right,
Like
exactly.
Right, exactly.
But it's all just like artistic preference. I like even and I feel like going back to Rob Liefeld, he gets his bodies were way out of proportion, and giant thighs and tiny hands and huge shoulders, but
Mm,
you know look at how Ed McGuinness draws stuff. Like he draws everybody just like barrel chested, big, thick arms. It's
right.
just
true,
it's
true.
just a style. Everybody has their own style. It's art. I prefer more stylized comic book art to
hmm
more lifelike art. So
Yeah,
it's just a style.
same,
It's,
same.
it's
Because I feel
so
like
I,
if everything looked more realistic, then there wouldn't be there wouldn't be any like a difference between artists. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't have
right.
like that signature style. With some people.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
because people like
I
Todd
like
McFarlane have a very particular, like you see a Todd McFarlane drawing, you know it's Todd McFarlane.
Mhm.
yeah.
Like
Yeah, I like everybody having different styles, and I don't love the photorealistic stuff as much. Like Alex Maleev, I'm not the biggest Alex Maleev fan. All his work with Bendis on Daredevil and all this indie stuff they've
That
done.
stuff
Or
almost felt like, those old coffee table books that had people's
hmm
like photography portfolios in it. That's kind of what
mhm.
those
yeah,
books feel like.
yeah, I like more. If I'm gonna be reading a comic book, I want comic booky. I want wild, stylized art that I can't go out of my door and see. I can't see people that look like that
Right, like I
because
like
it's art. It's just
Javier
a book.
Rodriguez's artwork. He's been working on the Defenders books lately, and his is like
Oh
really,
yeah.
really, really stylized, real bright, vivid colors. Like I like that stuff. It's very
Mhm.
like basic and simplified, but it's just really bright and in your face.
Yeah.
True, true. Like for me, I think the one artist that truly defined comic book art, who recently was his birthday, and that is Jack Kirby, man.
Oh yeah.
Like he, that is when I think of like comic book art, it is definitely Jack Kirby, hands down. They don't call him the
Yeah,
king.
yeah, for sure. He definitely had a style all his own. When you're looking at a Jack Kirby
Right.
book. Like there's no question, or Jack Kirby art. When you're looking at Jack Kirby. And another guy who was ahead of his time is Jim Steranko. Like
Jim
his
Steranko,
stuff
yes.
when he was doing like the Nick Fury, the Strange Tale
Mhm.
stuff in the later part of the 60s, nothing else from that time looks like his books.
Right. Right.
With his not only with his figures and stuff, but his layouts and the way he would lay out the books. There was, I think it's Strange Tales 166, where Nick Fury's breaking into like an AIM or a Hydra base or something, and it's kind of like a maze, and the panel goes from being straight up, and the next one is sideways, and the next one is upside down, and the next one is the other way, like clock. You read it clockwise, or maybe it's counterclockwise, to give you that feeling of, oh, he's trying to get through this like maze of Hydra stuff, and yeah, there's nothing else looked like Steranko at the time.
Exactly.
So it's fun finding artists that look completely different,
Mhm. I love it, and
seeing
that's
seeing
something
Oh
that
everybody's
yeah,
take on
modern
100%.
things.
comics do today. Like, uh, we can look at Greg Capullo kind of did that
Hmm.
in Court of Owls,
Yep.
the one issue where Batman is in the maze and you have to
Yep.
like turn the page around and turn the book around. It makes for a really cool reading experience.
Yeah, and that one was extra cool because Batman was drugged too, so he barely knew which way was up, and so having to rotate the book like that just
Yes.
added to that element of wow, I really don't know what's going on, and I'm kind of lost. And it's funny because I read that digitally, so I had to turn on the orientation lock on my
Oh,
device because
Because it just kept
the
switching.
page kept flipping. I'm like, no, stop it! I gotta try to. So
oh
yeah, I
man,
got the omnibus of it now, so I was looking at it just the other day. But yeah, reading that
Mhm.
digitally was fun.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
That's crazy. That's crazy. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
I love a good non-standard layout in comics. You
Mhm.
know, where you had the Amazing Spider-Man #7 was like that, where there's this big two-page spread, but it was vertical. Like you had to turn it this way to
Hmm.
see the full thing, and that was really fun. I love seeing that kind of stuff. I love when artists really get to cut
Yeah.
loose and do weird things.
What do you think of the current Spider-Man run? Because a lot of people were not liking it when it started.
I'm not loving it. You know, Spider-Man's been my #1 favorite for pretty much my entire life, and I'll never not buy a Spider-Man comic, but
Mhm.
I'm just not loving this run. Like I just don't. It seems like it's all over the place. Like I don't really know what the goal is, and seeing him now be buddies with
Well, we
Norman
still have
Osborn
that
and
6 month gap that was at the beginning of the
yeah,
story that they still haven't explained.
I think we're gonna get some stuff here in the next few issues. There's a it's gonna tie in with the X-Men and I think all the Hellfire Gala stuff, which I'm not reading. I'm not reading any X books, but
I'm not either.
Same.
I think we're gonna start to get some clues as to what happened. But it's just not. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't really loved Spider-Man since all the Dan Slott stuff. I didn't really love Nick Spencer's run either. Um, not trying to hate on it at all. I mean, I know a lot of people do like it, and that's awesome. But it's just, it's just
Right.
not really what I want.
The
I was gonna say that's another thing I've been hearing a lot of is a lot of Dan Slott slander lately.
I don't get
I don't get it. I think people they just don't like Dan Slott the person,
I
so
think so.
they're just
Yeah.
trying to hate
Did
on
he do
Spider Man.
something, or is there something I'm not aware
He,
of?
no, he's just he's outspoken on Twitter and he's left
Hmm.
leaning. But I am too,
Okay.
so that doesn't bother me because he and I have the same viewpoints on things, so I don't really notice it. But a lot of people do because they have different ideas, and it's one of those shut up and write. You just I follow you for comic books, not political commentary and that kind of thing, and you know
There's been a lot of that floating around. I'm sure you guys saw
Hmm.
what was it, Straw Hats video the other day?
which one?
He went off on somebody in the comments because they basically told him to stop responding to negative
Oh
comments.
yeah,
Oh
that
yeah.
was yeah, that was my buddy Bilaller who made that video about hey, he's like, hey, I'm a fan, but I don't think you should give all these negative comments attention, and maybe you shouldn't, maybe you should have said that, maybe you shouldn't have, I don't know. But then Straw Hat like makes this really sort of condescending video. I didn't, and a lot of people are agreeing with him, and that's fine. He's a big popular TikTok guy, but I thought he was really just kind of condescending in his response. I didn't think he handled it as well as he should have, as early as could have, I guess.
Yeah, he might have worded things a little strongly.
Yeah,
I don't feel like he needed to come at the guy quite that harshly,
yeah.
but at the same time, I do kind of see where he's coming from because, like he said, it does kind of give shut up and dribble vibes
Yes. Well, I think
slightly. But then again, I'm also not fully aware of the situation, and no hate to either of these
yeah.
creators because I don't know either one of them personally. So,
True.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I get where when he said it gave me shut up and dribble vibes. I understand how he could take it that way, but having seen Bilaller's video before that, like that definitely wasn't what how he was intending it. So
right.
I could see how he took it that way, but he took it the wrong way if that's how he took it. That wasn't the intention at all.
I
So
just think just got caught on the wrong day. You know,
yeah,
he
probably
saw the
he was
comment.
probably having a bad day,
That's
and
what it
yeah,
He's
looked
probably
like.
having a bad day, and people have a bad day.
sure.
Um,
That's the whole point of the Killing Joke, right? You're only one bad day away from just doing, just being the complete villain,
mhm.
So,
Right.
which is a
Yeah.
really
100%.
interesting. Are you guys reading the new the The one with that Tom King wrote about the Riddler. I can't.
Oh,
Is it called One Bad
One
Day?
Bad
And
Day.
yeah, One Bad
Yeah,
Day, and there's all the
I
different one
have not
shots.
read it, but I've heard a lot of good things
Yeah, I
about it
have
so
too. I
far.
haven't read it, but I was kind of waiting for a
I
trade.
haven't
But
read it either. I have the issue, and
yeah,
I just haven't got to it. It's
yeah, but that's
long.
an
It's
interesting
like
concept, and I love that the Killing Joke is Joker tormenting Commissioner Gordon to prove his point that you're only one bad day away from being just like me, bro, and Gordon won't really
And
give into
he's
that, and
not wrong because
he's not
really
wrong.
that's all it takes
true,
Hmm.
is like everybody's got a certain point.
true,
And once you finally hit that point, it's
Yeah,
game over. Like
yeah. Yeah,
true.
everybody has a limit, and what does it take to get you to that limit and go beyond it, and then what do you do afterwards? And yeah, it's
Mhm.
really interesting. And then, and of course, Killing Joke's just awesome anyway with the ambiguous ending, and did Batman kill Joker? Did he not? You can see it both ways, and
Right.
yeah, what a great story.
It is.
I think he did, but
Yeah.
I mean, I could if I look at the Killing Joke as like a one off, then yes, he did.
Mhm.
But the fact that it's in continuity, it's like
Well, but it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. I mean, it is because they stuck with the whole Barbara Gordon getting shot and getting
mhm,
paralyzed, but I think that's where it stops. So I'm not real. I don't know that the ending was really canon. It's weird. It's one of those weird ones, like
right.
where it wasn't really canon, but they did use elements from that. Um,
and see that brings up another point. Like, what is canon anymore? There are so many tie-ins. There's so many events. There's so many different books
True.
out. Who's to even say what's canon anymore?
yeah, I think we have so much now that we can just decide for ourselves what we want to be canon and what
That's
we
what I
don't want to
do.
be canon.
That's exactly what I do.
Yeah,
Uh,
because I see a lot of arguments on social media over that too in the fandom community. What's canon and what's not? And I'm like, if it's been made, then it exists somewhere.
Yeah,
So just call it all
you know,
canon.
you know
It
where
can
I
all
think
be
the
into
argument
different
comes from.
universes if it makes you feel better.
right.
You know what I'm
Like,
saying?
you want to know what I think the argument comes from mostly? I think it comes from like the versus battles and the
Mm,
fact that people bring up, you know, certain versions of characters that definitely aren't the main continuity, like Injustice Superman and blah blah
right.
blah. So now I think people now are so hyper focused on what's canon, what's not canon, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. Yeah,
What matters, what doesn't, that kind of thing. Because
exactly.
the like Dark Knight's Death Metal, which I haven't read yet, but I know it established the Omniverse in DC, which is
Hmm.
a multiverse of multiverses, and it's crazy. But it's like, oh, now that we have the Omniverse, everything matters and everything's canon. Well, I don't need that explanation. I can just go read
Right,
Batman 66, and that matters to me because it's in that's the story that book is telling, and I don't need everything to I don't need everything to have an actual reason as to why it matters. Just go read the story. It doesn't matter if it how it fits into the larger
Exactly.
thing.
Thank you.
Every story is real. If you can hold a book in your hand and read the story, then that story exists, and you can put as much or as little into it as you want.
and I think a lot of people don't really understand the point in that line of the omniverse, right?
Yeah,
It's
I don't
saying
either.
like everything is canon. Everything is canon within the omniverse, within the multiverse. So like whatever happens on a certain Earth, that's
Mhm.
canon, you know. Or
For that Earth.
mhm.
So why even bother worrying about what's main continuity anymore? Because as far as I can see, there is no main continuity for anything anymore.
It's definitely
True.
getting real loosey goosey, like we talked about with Dark Crisis. Even though Dark Crisis is taking place supposedly in the main DC continuity, but also Action Comics is as well, and they don't agree. So what's real and what isn't, it doesn't matter. I don't really care that much anymore. I just want to read stories. I don't care how they fit. When
Yeah.
when they interlock together, then awesome, and we'll get a big event. And when they don't, then I'll just read whatever story I'm being given, and I don't care how it all fits. It doesn't all have to fit. A great
Right.
example is I made a video about this a while back, or maybe I intended to, about how
Mhm.
the difference between like the DCEU and the MCU, and how Warner Brothers is now gung ho, making their own cinematic universe and 10-year plans and all that stuff. But I kind of feel like the DCEU was in a good place because they weren't so tight knit and they could make a bunch of different stuff that whatever they wanted to make and didn't have to worry about explaining it all. Whereas the MCU has spent the last 14 years making everything so super connected that when something comes out like the new Spider-Man freshman year, that new animated series, the minute
Right.
anything comes out about that, people bend over backwards trying to figure out how does this fit. Well, it doesn't necessarily fit. It doesn't have to fit. Everything else fits in the MCU, but this doesn't. It can be its own thing. But everybody, the minute that comes out, oh wait, well, Harry Oz or Norman Osborn was there instead of Tony Stark, so maybe this is a multiverse thing. But maybe we might still get some. And
And I
but
just watch people pull their hair out trying to figure this
True.
stuff
yeah,
out,
but
and
then
it's
when you
like
have stuff
at the
like
end of the day, it's not that deep.
yeah, it
The
doesn't matter. And
trash.
and but then you have stuff like the Harley Quinn animated series, and nobody cares if nobody's trying to figure out is that DCEU or not because it doesn't matter.
Right.
So
Right.
they're all these stories are real. You just pick whichever ones you like and watch them or read them, and then who cares about the
Ignore the
rest?
ones you
Yeah,
don't.
who cares
What?
about the rest?
Speaking of the Harley Quinn series, I don't hear the way how that series, and I don't know if y'all have watched it or not, but I'm
I've
really
seen some of it.
I
Yeah.
watched
surprised.
some of it.
Not a lot of you know dude bros complain about it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and
They're
I
very
had to take your
selective in
I
what
do
they
word.
find
complain
that
about.
I had to
interesting.
take
I
your
find
word.
that interesting that, because that's a pretty quote unquote woke show if you look at it.
Yeah,
Like,
Right. And then the stuff they do with
I don't hear
Batman and
nobody outraged about
uh,
that, but
yeah. They're very
uh,
selective in what they're
Superman's
outraged
son
about.
comes out as bisexual and
Yeah,
all hell breaks loose.
yeah.
or just even
Yeah,
the jokes.
no, that's a great point. But I don't know. I don't know why Harley Quinn is okay and why everything else isn't. But I'm fine with all of it. It's funny, the Superman Son of Kal-El stuff is hilarious because you can tell those guys don't actually read the books because across what are we at? We're at about 10 issues now since he came out as bisexual. And if you looked at
Hmm.
all 10 of those issues and took every single panel where there's some kind of reference to John Kent's relationship, you might have enough to fill 3 pages out of 10 issues.
Yeah.
It's
Maybe.
like
Like,
it's almost never mentioned.
Right.
It's never that's not the
it's
focus of
just
any of the
literally a
story.
part of his
Yeah,
character.
that's all
It's
it is.
not a story plot. Like,
Right.
the funny thing about that was there was like mainstream news media outlets outraged
Yeah.
about that,
Well,
saying
so
that Clark Kent's not blah blah blah. I'm like, first of all, this isn't Clark Kent. This is Jonathan Kent. This is not even the same person that you're
True.
upset about. And secondly, you're complaining that he's an American hero and like actually he's an immigrant.
yeah,
He's technically an illegal immigrant if you really want to get specific
yeah.
about
True that.
it.
True that. True that.
Yeah, people getting irate about the all he does is he spends all of his time protesting climate change because of the one cover where he's like holding up a sign,
Right, and
but
that wasn't
it
even
wasn't even
part
in
of the
the issue.
book.
Yeah, it didn't even do that in the actual story.
It was just a
Yeah,
cover.
that's
Like,
all it was. It was a cover. Instead in that issue,
and I almost feel like they did that on purpose just to see if they could get a reaction out of
probably.
everybody.
Well, see, what's funny about all that stuff is they so when something big like that happens, DC might issue a press release and say, starting with number 5, John Kent is bisexual. Here's the press release about it. And but that's all DC will say about it is they'll issue their press release and then all the media outlets will then take it and run with it. But the guys who get upset about that stuff think, oh, DC only does it so they can get all this publicity, and they do it to virtual signal and so they can check all these boxes and stuff. But they don't. All they did was just release one press release. Like they're not out here saying, "Look at us." Here's one piece of
Right, it
information
was the
about it, and
media that blew
yeah, it's
that
the
up.
media that always
So
blows this stuff up, and DC's over here like, "Well, we're just making comics, man. We're just writing comics and drawing comics, and you guys are out here the ones talking about it."
Right.
So it's that
I
stuff's
like the
funny.
writer. I follow the writer on Twitter, and
Yeah,
he
he's
gets
great.
some really hateful
Yeah,
comments because of
Oh
that
yeah.
book. Like it's ridiculous.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, y'all are really this upset over a fictional
And
character?
right.
what's crazy? Like, I feel like most of the people that are so mad of it, I don't even think they read comics or they
No, they don't.
haven't
Mm-mm.
read comics in like years.
Yeah,
Because
They're just prejudiced and they're upset.
yeah.
That's
you can
what it
say the
is.
same thing happened with Tim Drake.
Hmm.
And the media just went so stupid. I remember seeing articles, and they would have pictures of Dick Grayson's Robin,
Oh
or
yeah,
they would have pictures of
Yeah,
Jason's
it's like
Robin.
tell me you don't know what you're talking about without telling me you don't know what
yeah,
you're talking about.
yeah.
Exactly.
Like,
And then I've always been like, have these people ever like read Tim Drake stories? Because I don't know about y'all, but him and Connor, they were a little close. Okay, like come
That they
on,
had a close friendship. Yeah,
like, and then like,
and there's like the running joke that, the Joker's in love with Batman. So I
right.
mean,
yeah. I think it's more of like
which
just like
would
a
make
weird
sense if you
infatuation.
it's definitely just more of a weird infatuation, but you could
Yeah,
definitely see where people would get that idea with some
Mhm.
of the stories and
yeah.
how the Joker acts with Batman.
True that. True
Well, and
that.
and there's the new. I haven't read it yet. I'm waiting for the trade. But Batman the Knight, with the story about him, like his early days training.
Oh
And there
yes.
was, the one issue where he sort of got close to a guy to get information, and now, oh, Batman's bisexual now too. Well, not really. He was just doing what he had to do. He's doing what
Exactly.
he knew would work to extract information from a guy.
It's called espionage.
Exactly. That's
Right.
exactly what it was. Yeah.
Right.
So you gotta make sure you take in all the context around these stories, and that's where these guys don't do that.
They just see a panel and they don't have the context of the whole book, so they're just like,
Right.
you just run with it. It's honestly
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, but you mentioned earlier in the show about Marvel Comics doing a great job about always bringing up like societal issues and stuff. Like they've been doing it since the '60s.
Right.
There was there's so many issues in the early '70s with protests on college campuses because of the Vietnam War, which was
Mm-hmm.
actually happening at the time. And there's they created Black Panther as a literally as a way to get more diverse characters on the page and in the books. And like they've always Marvel especially has always been aware of the world around them, and they've always written their books to reflect the world around them. They're not Marvel Comics, especially Marvel Comics, isn't doing anything differently than what they've ever done. It's
Exactly.
just that
No.
society, the real world, has
Mm-hmm.
changed. We society now has different issues that they face, and Marvel is just doing what they've always done and just writing about those issues. More diverse
Mm-hmm.
characters and all this different kind of thing, and they're not doing anything that they haven't done, for the last 60 years.
Exactly. Exactly. Like look
100%.
at you can even look at what Jack Kirby went through when he with Captain America.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, like stuff like that. You know, like this stuff isn't like brand new.
Yeah, people who think comic books are just now woke now,
Right. Or
oh man,
they've
they've
been like this since their inception. I mean,
exactly.
come on. Like
Exactly.
they've always tackled like social issues.
yeah, there was an issue of Fantastic Four where Black Panther changed his name to Black. Shoot, was it Black? A different cat, like not a panther, but a
Hmm.
different type of cat,
Mm-hmm.
and that was done purposely because Stanley didn't want to have him mistaken, make the readers think he was actually like part of the Black Panther movement in the real world. That didn't stick, but that only Black Leopard is what it was, Black Leopard. But that only lasted for an issue, and then there was an issue I think of Avengers where he calls himself Black Panther again. They said, oh, I thought you changed your name. And he's like, well, I was going to because of the Black Panther movement, but why should I change my name? And I am who I am, and that kind of thing. And so they have
Right.
always focused on real world stuff and brought real world stuff into their books. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just, the world has changed around them and they're just adapting to it.
And I feel like that's how they
Yeah,
stand the
it's
test of time. You know,
Yeah.
um, if you go on any like top 10 like comics of all time like list, most of them deal with political or social issues in some type of way. You're gonna see Watchmen on there. You're gonna see Dark Knight Returns. You're gonna see some X-Men books. Like
Oh, yeah.
that's just how it is. But yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah, so I think we could probably go ahead and wrap it up there, guys. This has been an awesome conversation.
Dude,
We
yeah.
definitely got to have you back on here,
Yes.
Oh
Bumpkins,
man,
for
I
sure.
yeah, just be careful what you wish for because I could talk about this stuff till the sun comes up, man. I love all this kind of stuff. Just anything comics
Well,
related, I
hey,
love
we're
it, you know.
we're on live on TikTok all the time too, so
Yeah.
just come by, hang out, man. But you guys have been listening to Crossover Comics Podcast, issue number 2. We're going to bring you issue number 3 in 2 weeks. Make sure you check out our other podcast, Color Break, from our other co-hosts, Comic Book Stash and Cody Collects. My name is Jeremy, also JJ's Comic Stuff on pretty much all social media platforms.
My name is Michael, aka Lone Box Entertainment, on TikTok and Instagram.
And I'm at Bumpkins TV on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, pretty much those. YouTube as well.
All right. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening, and we will catch you guys next time.
All
Yep.
right.
Have a good one.